Chapter 1. A year begins with complaints. The first Monday of the new year arrived with the sort of bleak determination only January could muster. Snow slumped in gray piles beside the driveway. The coffee tasted weaker than it had any right to be, and Miley Stone had already hit snooze 3 times before finally dragging herself from bed. She shuffled into the kitchen, hair escaping in rebellious curls, fuzzy socks mismatched and proud of it. Marty the calico eyed her from the counter with the judgmental expression of a general reviewing an incompetent recruit. "Don't start," Miley muttered, setting the mug under the machine. Marty blinked once, slow, disdainful, and mentally scribbled in the invisible notebook she swore he kept. Day 153 of my captivity. The human rises late, clearly weakened by confinement. Escape remains impossible due to her suspicious vigilance around all doors and windows. Her phone buzzed, and buzzed again, then again. "Oh no," she whispered. "Already?" She checked the screen. "Mom. Just checking in, honey. Had the strangest dream last night about your father. Call me when you're up." Seconds later, "Dad. Morning, kiddo. Funny thing. Your mother left a comment on my New Year's post and now I can't stop thinking about her. Call me when you're free." The coffee machine sputtered loudly, almost in sympathy. Miley pinched the bridge of her nose. "It's 7:12 a.m. You two can't still be doing this." Marty yawned in agreement or possibly boredom. Hard to tell. She made the mistake of calling her mother first. The line barely rang once. "Oh, thank goodness. I didn't wake you, did I? You sound groggy." "Mornings exist, Mom. I'm dealing with it." "Well, I only called because I had this dream. Your father and I were back at the cabin, the one from the honeymoon. He was wearing that horribly adorable flannel shirt, and we were laughing about the time we burned the pancakes. And I..." She paused, voice wavering. It felt so real. Miley took a long sip of coffee. "Mom, you know dreams aren't signs. They're just coincidences, I know." Her mother sighed. "Still, I keep thinking, maybe we shouldn't have given up as easily as we did. You two divorced 17 years ago, and we talk more now than we ever did when we were married." Her mother shot back. "Isn't that odd?" "I don't think it's odd. I think it's consistency." "Oh haha, very funny." But there was hurt beneath the smile. 10 minutes later, Miley hung up with the gentle promise that she'd think about it, which was code for "I need coffee first." She barely got 2 sips before the phone buzzed again. She contemplated ignoring it. She didn't. "Hey kiddo," he said, warm and familiar. "You got a minute? For you? Always." She stirred her coffee, bracing herself. "Your mother commented on my New Year's picture," he said, voice drifting toward the nostalgic. "Said she liked my beard. Your mother, who never liked facial hair, ever. Well, people change. Do they?" His sigh crackled through the speaker. "Because I still miss her sometimes. Dad. I'm not saying I want to get back together," he rushed. "I'm just saying regrets linger. And I hate regrets." It was the same conversation they had every January. Her parents, stuck in a 17-year symphony of almost admissions and misguided pride. It would have been comical if it wasn't so exhausting. By the time she reached the office, she already felt drained. Her cubicle greeted her with the same stale air and flickering fluorescent glow it had in December. Marketing and sales wasn't her passion, it wasn't even in the running, but it paid the bills, and the bills were ruthless. "Morning, superstar." Her manager, Trent, poked his head over the partition. "Ready for a big kickoff week?" "Define ready," she said, setting her bag down. "Perfect, you're in the right mindset." He handed her a packet of printouts. "We've got 3 new campaigns starting, a pitch meeting Friday, and our quarterlies are behind schedule. So I told the team we'd rely on you." "Why me?" "Because you're reliable. You don't complain, you don't quit, and you don't spontaneously move to Bali like Jill did last year." Really dodged a bullet on that one. Miley stared at him. "Sometimes I think Jill had the right idea." Trent laughed as though she was joking. She wasn't. By the time lunch rolled around, she'd spent hours building spreadsheets, drafting copy, and pretending she didn't feel an ache behind her ribs. The familiar ache she trained herself to ignore. The one that whispered of stages, microphones, and melodies. Of the jazz band invitation she'd turned down in her 20s because she'd chosen practicality over passion. Because she'd chosen the safe route. Because she'd been afraid to leap when no one promised a net. Music was her dream. Marketing was her compromise. She hadn't sung in public in years. Miley was halfway through microwaving leftover pasta when her phone buzzed again. This time it was a group chat with all 4 grandparents. She frowned. That never happened. Grandpa Howard. "Emergency meeting. Tonight, 6 p.m. Nana Rosa. Where's something nice?" Grandpa Walt. "We have cheesecake." Grandma Irene. "Your parents are driving us insane. Enough is enough." Miley blinked at the messages. Cheesecake. Emergency meeting. Parental insanity. She read the thread twice. Then a 3rd time. Marty, who had followed her into the kitchen, sat at her feet staring up with military gravitas. She knew he was narrating his internal monologue again. Day 153 continues. Leadership appears distracted by encoded communications from their elders. Opportunity for tunnel-based escape may present itself during the evening exodus. She exhaled, long and slow. Maybe it was the relentless January air. Maybe it was the years of emotional whiplash from parents who still loved each other but refused to admit it. Maybe it was the dream she'd had last night about singing on stage, the spotlight warm on her skin. Whatever the cause, something inside her shifted. Tiredness transformed into resolve. "I can't keep doing this," she whispered. Marty chirped in agreement, misunderstanding entirely. She picked up her phone and typed into the chat, "Miley, I'll be there. We need to fix this. One way or another." The grandparents responded with confetti emojis, hearts, and what she assumed were celebratory gifts they didn't understand how to use properly. Miley closed her eyes, letting the decision settle through her. For the first time in a long while, she felt something close to inspiration. Maybe even hope. She had no idea how she was going to fix her parents. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. This year was going to be different. Chapter 2, The Love Summit. The grandparents lived only 12 minutes apart, but somehow arriving at their houses always felt like stepping into completely different eras. Grandpa Howard and Nana Rosa lived in a cozy 1970s split level filled with doilies, glass figurines, and a suspicious number of decorative pillows. Meanwhile, Grandpa Walt and Grandma Irene occupied a crisp, modern bungalow that looked like a lifestyle magazine had moved in and refused to leave. Tonight's Love Summit, a term coined by Grandpa Howard, who took any opportunity to make things sound official, was being held in the bungalow. Miley parked outside, scarf wrapped tight around her neck, the winter air biting with the precision of someone who had trained for it. She knocked once before opening the door. "It's me." "Kitchen," Grandma Irene called. The scent of cheesecake and something herbal drifted toward her. She stepped into the kitchen to find all four grandparents seated around the island, facing her like a tribunal, albeit a friendly one, each with a fork poised over a slice of cheesecake so tall it could have been a structural hazard. "Good you're here," Nana Rosa said, patting the seat beside her. "We have much to discuss. And cheesecake to eat," Grandpa Walt added. "Don't underestimate the cheesecake." Miley sat, setting her gloves aside. "Okay, what's going on? Your text sounded dramatic." "That's because it is," said Grandpa Howard, who slapped a folded piece of paper onto the island. It fluttered open to reveal a list titled Operation Reunion in thick marker. "We've had enough." Miley blinked. "Enough of what?" Her grandparents looked at her like the answer should be obvious. "Your parents," Grandma Irene said, slicing her cheesecake with surgical efficiency. "They've been dancing around each other's feelings for nearly 2 decades. It's exhausting." "It's romantic," Nana Rosa said dreamily. "It's infuriating," Grandpa Walt countered. "Both can be true." Miley leaned back, letting their words wash over her. She wasn't sure if she should laugh or cry. "So what are we doing? Staging an intervention?" "Oh no," Grandpa Howard said, waving his fork. "Interventions are confrontational. This is a gentle nudge." "With cheesecake," Grandpa Walt added. "Cheesecake is essential," Nana Rosa said. Miley folded her arms. "You're really serious." "As a quadruple bypass," Grandpa Howard said proudly, tapping his chest. "Top surgeon in the state." They gathered closer, conspiratorial. Miley lowered her voice instinctively. "Okay, tell me." Grandma Irene pointed at the paper. "We believe the fastest way to make them talk is to remove their excuses." Nana Rosa nodded. "Work? No. Phones? Minimal. Distractions? Absolutely not." "And where do we remove all excuses?" Grandpa Walt asked. "The cabin," said Grandpa Howard. Miley's breath caught. "Their honeymoon cabin?" All four grandparents nodded. A memory surfaced, warm, sunlit photos of her parents young and beaming, leaning against the stone fireplace with their cheeks flushed from laughter. That time had felt sacred, a moment before life complicated itself. "They still talk about that place," Nana Rosa said. "Separately, of course. Always separately. We think if we recreate the atmosphere," Grandma Irene added, "maybe they'll finally stop being so stubborn." "Says the woman who refused to apologize for 10 years because you were technically correct about the thermostat," Grandpa Walt muttered. "Don't start," she shot back. Miley pressed her palms together. "Okay, let's say we do this. How exactly does it work?" "Simple," Grandpa Howard said. "Each parent will be invited to the cabin for a family weekend. Separately, they won't know the other is coming. Or that you'll already be there prepping everything," Grandma Irene added. Nana Rosa beamed. "We'll all arrive together afterward. Just a cozy, innocent gathering." "You sure they won't catch on?" Miley asked. "No," Grandpa Walt admitted. "But we're relying on the fact that they've been oblivious for 17 years. "Well," Miley said, "you're not wrong." She reached for her slice of cheesecake. It was rich, smooth, perfect, criminally comforting. Maybe a sugar high would help her process the fact that her grandparents were enlisting her in a romantic sting operation. "So," Nana Rosa said softly, "you'll do it? You'll help us?" Miley paused, fork hovering. She thought about her mother's wistful sigh. Her father's lingering regrets. The years of almost confessions neither had the courage to articulate. She also thought about her own life, about choosing the safe path, the sensible one. About the ache she carried for the music she'd left behind. About wanting, desperately, to believe that broken things could be mended. "I'll do it," she said. "I'm in." The grandparents lit up like a flock of delighted Christmas trees. Grandpa Howard stood and slapped the Operation Reunion list down in front of her. "Good. You're in charge of preparations." "Why me?" "Because you're the only one who can get there early without raising suspicion," Grandma Irene said. "And you're organized," Nana Rosa said. "And stubborn," Grandpa Walt added. "Thank you. I think. You'll leave Friday morning for the cabin," Grandma Irene continued. "We'll bring your parents separately a few hours after. You set up the environment." "What environment?" "The one that makes them remember," Nana Rosa whispered. "The one that reminds them of why they fell in love." Miley nodded slowly. "Okay, I can do that." Grandpa Howard clasped his hands together. "It's settled, then. Operation Reunion is underway." Miley exhaled, nerves and purpose twisting together. "This is either going to be wonderful or a disaster." "Life's best things usually start that way," Nana Rosa said. As the meeting wound down, the grandparents chatted with rising excitement, already brainstorming playlists, board games, and which brand of hot chocolate mix her parents liked best in 1996. Miley slipped her phone from her pocket, checking the time. She still had emails to answer, a campaign summary to finalize, a cat waiting at home who believed he was a prisoner of war. But for the first time in a long while, she felt something new simmering beneath her ribs, a strange, hopeful warmth. She was going to fix her family. She didn't know how, but she would try. When she got home that evening, Marty greeted her at the door, tail flicking with offended flair. "Sorry I'm late," she said, hanging up her coat. Miley returned after nightfall. Marty likely scribbled in his imaginary diary. Suspicious. She carried the scent of dairy-based bribes. Enemy may be plotting major offensive. She scooped him up anyway. "We've got work to do." Marty blinked, unimpressed. Miley smiled into his fur. Operation Reunion had begun. Chapter 3. Cabin prep and an unexpected stranger. The drive to the cabin wound through rolling hills and pines dusted with powdered snow. The sky a pale winter blue that looked almost translucent. Miley's car hummed along the narrow road. Marty perched in his carrier on the passenger seat with all the dignity of a monarch being transported against their will. "Almost there," she told him. Marty responded with a low, unimpressed chirp. "Day 158 of captivity," he surely wrote in his mental journal. "The human relocates me to an undisclosed remote location. I suspect interrogation or forced labor." "Relax," Miley said. "You're basically going on vacation." He hissed softly, the kind of hiss that translated clearly to, "Your propaganda is weak, human." But despite his dramatics, Miley felt strangely calm, determined, hopeful. Operation Reunion was officially underway. The cabin came into view after a turn, a wide, rustic structure with cedar siding, large windows, and a wraparound porch. Smoke already curled lazily from the chimney. That caught her off guard. Grandpa Howard must have sent the caretaker ahead to warm the place up. She parked, stepped out, and immediately inhaled the cold, with smoke-spiced air. It smelled like memory. Just as she rounded the trunk to grab a bag, a deep voice called, "You lost." Miley whipped around. A man stood near the woodpile, stacking logs into an orderly row. He looked to be late 30s, broad-shouldered beneath a worn flannel jacket, dark blonde hair tucked under a beanie, and eyes the color of green glass warmed by sunlight. Rugged without trying. A little too handsome for someone who probably split wood as a hobby. "No," she said, tightening her scarf. "I'm not lost. I'm supposed to be here." He lowered a log onto the pile. "You sure? Most people don't arrive until late evening." "Most people aren't me." His mouth tipped into a half smile. "Fair enough." He walked toward her with the kind of easy confidence that suggested he belonged to the land around him. Close enough to town, but still grounded in quiet places like this. "I'm Evan," he said, offering a gloved hand. "I take care of the place." She shook it. His grip was warm through the cold. "Miley. Miley Stone." She blinked, surprised. "Yeah. You're Howard's granddaughter," he said. "He told me you'd be coming early. Didn't say why." Miley fought the urge to grimace. Grandpa Howard was many things. Subtle was not one of them. "Just prepping. For a family weekend." "You the coordinator type?" Evan asked, leaning casually against the woodpile. "Something like that," she replied. "I like things organized. You and Howard both." He nodded toward her car. "Need help carrying things in?" She hesitated. "You don't have to." "True," he said. "But I'm offering." His tone was polite, warm, annoyingly disarming. And Miley's grandmother had raised her with good manners. "Fine," she relented. "Thanks." He grinned, the kind of grin that sneaked past defenses before you even knew it was happening. "Lead the way." Together they unloaded her car. Marty glared at Evan through the carrier bars as if assessing a new enemy combatant. Evan glanced down. Cute cat. That's one word for him. What's the other? Strategic menace. Evan chuckled. I'll keep that in mind. Inside, the cabin felt exactly as Miley remembered. The stone fireplace dominated the living room, its flames crackling warmly. The wood floors were polished but still carried the subtle creak of age. The kitchen gleamed from a recent cleaning, and the windows framed the pond outside like a painting, ice forming delicate edges around the water. You staying for the weekend too? Evan asked as he set down one of the grocery bags. No, just prepping, she said carefully. The rest of the family will join tomorrow. Aha. He raised an eyebrow. And you're being mysterious because? I'm not being mysterious. You absolutely are. Miley folded her arms. I'm coordinating she paused. She couldn't exactly tell him. Actually, I'm secretly reuniting my divorced parents and trying to reignite their dormant love through strategic nostalgia and forced proximity. So instead, a family event. Coordinating. Evan pretended to jot something down in the air. Mysterious file number 1. You're impossible. So I've been told. Miley ignored him and moved into the kitchen, unloading ingredients for the weekend meals. Evan followed, leaning against the counter with ease. You planning a feast? He asked. A reasonable amount of food for 6 people. You bought enough to feed a small wedding. Families eat, she said defensively. Sure. Evan smirked. Coordinators plan feasts. Mystery deepens. She sighed, but there was humor bubbling under the exasperation now. Why are you here today, anyway? Storm warning. He nodded toward the window, where gray clouds gathered low and heavy. Your grandfather asked me to make sure the cabin's stocked with wood, the generator's good, and the hot tub's functioning. Oh good, she said. The hot tub is important. For family events, it's a relaxation tool. Ah, Evan pointed 2 fingers at her, as if confirming another clue. Mysterious file number 2. She rolled her eyes. Anyway, thanks. Storms here get intense. Sometimes. Could trap you for a night if it's bad. That won't happen, she said. Everyone's arriving tomorrow. Nature doesn't care about plans. She paused, his words sinking deeper than intended. He must have noticed, because his smile softened a notch. Hey, I'm not trying to worry you. Just letting you know. You'll be safe here. It's a good cabin. I know, she said quietly. You staying alone tonight? With Marty. Evan glanced at the cat carrier, where Marty sat puffed up like an offended marshmallow. A fierce protector. You have no idea. Snowflakes began tapping the windows, the first notes of an approaching storm. Evan pushed off the counter. I'll get out of your way. But if anything breaks, or you need help, I'm 5 minutes down the road. Thanks. He moved toward the door, pausing with a hand on the frame. And hey, whatever you're planning, hope it goes well. She blinked. You don't even know what I'm planning. Doesn't matter. His smile warmed the room more than the fire. You look like someone doing something important. Hope it works out. With that, he stepped outside, snow swirling around him, boots crunching on the wooden steps. He headed toward the side shed, disappearing behind the curtain of white. Miley watched him go, heart still fluttering with the unexpected kindness in his voice. Marty meowed sharply from his carrier. I know, she said, sighing. The handsome caretaker is trouble. Marty's eyes narrowed. Day 158 continued. A new guard has appeared. Tall, suspiciously charming, likely dangerous. Miley placed the carrier on the couch and let him out. We're not getting distracted. We have a mission. Outside, the storm intensified, swirling snowflakes against the glass. Inside, the cabin crackled with warmth, and the first threads of something new she couldn't yet name. Operation Reunion had officially entered Phase 2. Chapter 4, the parents arrive. Separately, by the time morning light stretched across the snow-draped pines, the cabin smelled of cinnamon, brewing coffee, and the faintest trace of pine from the fire Miley had kept alive through most of the night. The storm had softened to a quiet drizzle of snowflakes drifting lazily past the windows, beautiful, calm, deceptive in its peace. Marty sat on the windowsill, twitching his tail with grave suspicion. Day 159 of captivity, he surely narrated. The human has prepared the compound. Enemy reinforcements are expected. Reinforcements? Miley muttered as she set out mugs. No one's the enemy. Marty clicked his tongue as if to say, spoken like someone already compromised. Miley ignored him. She had already organized the kitchen, prepared ingredients for the group meals, laid out board games in the living room, and even placed blankets beside the fireplace. Everything was designed to evoke comfort, not manipulation. She wasn't tricking her parents. She was simply nudging fate along. At 10:17 a.m., she looked through the window and froze. The first car was pulling up the narrow driveway. Her mother. Okay, she breathed, smoothing her hair and adjusting her sweater. Round 1. Miley stepped outside just as her mother, Elaine Stone, climbed out of her SUV with a tote bag slung over one shoulder and a nervous smile tugging at her mouth. Oh honey, Elaine exclaimed, hurrying over. You're here early. Did the others arrive? Not yet, Miley said, managing a casual tone. Come in, Mom. I've got coffee. Elaine hugged her tight. Miley closed her eyes. Her mother always hugged as though love were something she could press back into a person. When they pulled apart, Elaine ran a gloved hand over her own cheek, breath fogging in the cold. It's beautiful, she murmured. Just like I remember it. Miley's heart clenched, but she didn't comment. Come inside. It's warm. And for the next 20 minutes, they eased into small talk. Work stories, traffic, the weather. Elaine commented on the cabin's decor, reminisced about her wedding china, and admired Marty, who glared at her as if she were an invading general. Is that judgment? Elaine asked, baffled. Constantly, Miley said. They were settling into a pocket of comfortable silence when tires crunched over snow again. Miley stiffened. Oh, Elaine said, peeking through the window. Someone else is here. Your grandparents maybe. No, Miley said carefully. They're coming together later. Her mother's brow furrowed. She watched as the second car, a familiar blue sedan, pulled in beside hers. A figure stepped out. Miley swallowed. That, her father, Richard Stone, shut the car door gently, taking in the cabin with a breath that visibly shook in the cold. He adjusted his glasses. He looked hopeful, hesitant, lost in memory. Elaine took a half step back, hand to her mouth. Oh dear. Miley, she whispered sharply. Why didn't you tell me he'd be here? Because, Miley pressed her palms together. I didn't know everyone's schedules until last minute. It wasn't a complete lie, just strategically vague. The front door opened with a gust of cold air as her father entered. Hey kiddo, Richard said, smiling as he stomped snow from his boots, until his eyes lifted and spotted Elaine. The smile collapsed into shock, then awe, then panic, then something gentler. Elaine, he breathed. Richard, an entire 17-year history compressed into their two names. Miley had imagined this moment a dozen ways. Angry shouting, passive-aggressive muttering, one of them pretending to faint. But not this. The silence grew so thick Miley could practically stack it like firewood. Well, she said brightly, clapping her hands. Coffee. Her parents blinked, startled out of their spell. Coffee sounds good, Richard said. Yes, Elaine echoed. Coffee. Great. They shuffled awkwardly to the kitchen table like two schoolchildren forced to sit together after a classroom argument. Miley poured each a mug, then sat with them. The cabin crackled warmly around them. Outside, the snow fell in feathery sheets. So, Miley said, I thought we'd have a relaxing day indoors. Games, comfort food, just cozy stuff. Richard nodded slowly. Sure, sounds nice. Elaine offered a small smile. Yes, lovely. The air between them vibrated with unsaid things, familiar things, painful things, but also something softer, tentative. Miley knew better than to push. Instead, I was thinking chili for dinner. Or soup. Something warm. That sounds wonderful, Elaine said immediately. It does, Richard agreed. You always made great chili. Elaine blinked, heat rising to her cheeks. I haven't made chili in a while. You should, he said gently. You were good at it. Silence again, but different now. Miley felt a thread of hope tug at her ribs. At that moment, someone knocked on the door. Richard frowned. Expecting someone? No, Miley said, rising. But the caretaker might be stopping by. She opened the door to find Evan standing there, hair dusted with snow, holding a toolbox in one hand. Morning, he said, smiling. Hot tub's acting up again. Thought I'd fix it before the next storm hits. Good, Miley said too quickly. Yes, hot tub. Important. Evan tilted his head. You okay? She lowered her voice. Both my parents are here. He blinked. Both? Already? That early? Yes. At the same time? Yes. And you're still standing? Barely. He laughed softly. Want help distracting them? No, she whispered. I want them to talk. Naturally. Got it. He nodded, then looked past her into the cabin. You sure I shouldn't come in and… Before she could stop him, her mother peeked over Miley's shoulder. Oh, hello, Elaine said brightly. Are you Miley's boyfriend? Miley nearly choked. Mom. Evan's eyebrows hit the ceiling. Not exactly. I'm the caretaker. Oh, Elaine flushed but didn't stop smiling. Well, you're very handsome for a caretaker. Mom. Miley hissed again. Richard appeared next to Elaine, squinting. So you're the mysterious someone who split all that firewood? Good work. Solid craftsmanship. You single. Dad. Miley groaned. Evan laughed outright, covering his mouth like that might hide it. I'll just go fix the hot tub. Yes, Miley muttered. Please do. As he walked away, her parents exchanged glances. Amused, embarrassed, and oddly united for the first time all morning. Miley took a breath. Maybe the day would be chaotic. Maybe awkward. Possibly catastrophic. But for the first time, She felt something spark between her parents. Subtle but unmistakable. Familiarity, nostalgia, and hope. Marty leapt onto the table and glared at both parents equally. Day 159. Updated, he recorded solemnly. Enemy leaders have arrived. Chaos imminent. I remain vigilant. Miley scratched his head absent-mindedly. Operation Reunion had officially begun its trickiest phase. Chapter 5. Games, secrets, and so much tension. By mid-afternoon, the awkwardness had settled into something livable. Not gone, not healed, just simmering quietly beneath the surface like an unattended kettle. Miley took what victories she could get. Her parents had claimed separate corners of the living room at first. Her mother on the couch flipping through an old recipe book she'd found on the shelf. Her father near the fireplace pretending to inspect the stonework. Marty lounged between them like a furry, suspicious referee. Snow continued drifting outside the windows, the world soft and white and still. Miley clapped her hands once. Game time. Elaine and Richard both jolted like startled deer. Game? Her mother asked. Yes, Miley said, forcing cheerfulness into her voice. We're doing the classic family fun weekend. And that means board games. Her father squinted. What kind of board games? The good ones, she said. The nostalgic ones. Richard crossed his arms. If you made us play that ridiculous word game again, Elaine gasped. Ridiculous? I happen to like word stack. It's not a real game. It's a verbal hostage situation. I'm sorry you lack vocabulary range. I do not lack vocabulary range, Richard said. I simply refuse to play a game designed to make everyone feel like they're on a televised spelling bee. Miley sighed. Okay, we are not starting an argument about board games before the board game even starts. Her parents exchanged a look. Not hostile. Not warm. Something in between, familiar in a bittersweet way. Let's just play Scramble Tower, she said, holding up the box. You both liked this. They did. She remembered Saturday nights at the old house. The three of them building shaky towers of wooden tiles while her father pretended to be a structural engineer and her mother accused him of sabotage. Those were the memories she wanted to restore. Not the ones filled with silence and drifting apart. They gathered at the coffee table. Miley set the box down and cleared space while Marty perched on the armchair with narrowed eyes. Day 160 of captivity, he mentally narrated. Human rituals commence. I remain watchful for signs of weakness. Her parents settled across from each other, each attempting to look casual and failing. Miley began the round by placing the first tile. See? Easy. Elaine placed the second tile delicately. Richard followed with exaggerated precision. 3 turns later, the tower wobbled. Don't touch the table, Elaine warned. I'm not touching the table, Richard said. You breathed too hard. I did not breathe too hard. Miley rubbed her temples. Guys, I'm just saying, Elaine muttered. You always do this. You breathe like a windstorm when we play. Breathing is a basic function, Elaine. Not when you do it. Miley fought a laugh. This was exactly the kind of petty, ridiculous banter they used to have. Annoying, yes, but also deeply, unmistakably them. She added her tile, leaning back triumphantly. Ha, still stable. It's not stable, Richard said. It's leaning left. It is absolutely not leaning left, Elaine said. It's leaning so far left it's practically political. Elaine tried not to smile. Miley hid her grin behind her hand. Turn after turn, piece by piece, the tower rose. And slowly, so slowly, they relaxed. Shoulders loosened. Breathing steadied. The conversation stretched beyond sarcastic remarks into something warmer. Remember when we used to play this during thunderstorms? Elaine said softly. We had to, Richard replied. She was terrified of the thunder. I wasn't terrified, Miley protested. You were, her parents said in unison, then glanced at each other in surprise. Their smiles flickered, fragile but real. As the game continued, her parents shared memories they had avoided for years. Some funny, some hauntingly gentle. You made terrible hot chocolate, Richard said. Elaine gasped. Excuse me? My hot chocolate was amazing. You put too much cinnamon. There is no such thing as too much cinnamon. You turned it into a fire hazard. Miley looked between them. Mom, did you really put that much cinnamon? Your father exaggerates, Elaine said. I nearly coughed up a lung, Richard countered. Their bickering was soft now, not sharp. Familiar instead of bitter. Miley placed her next tile, balancing it carefully. The tower swayed, and everyone froze. Don't breathe, she warned. Her mother pressed her lips together. Her father held his breath. Miley moved her fingers away, slow, and the tower settled. They all exhaled. Thank God, her mother whispered. I almost passed out, her father said. Miley grinned. And that's round 1. She wasn't prepared for what happened next. A knock at the door. Her parents looked up. Miley's stomach swooped. Please, not a grandparent. Not yet. They needed more time. She hurried to the door and cracked it open. Evan stood there, holding a toolbox, snowflakes melting on his shoulders. Hey, he said, smiling. Hot tub issues fixed. Wanted to let you know. Miley nodded quickly. Good. Great. Thanks. Behind her, a voice said brightly, "Oh, it's the handsome caretaker again. Mom." Miley hissed over her shoulder. "Please." Evan's eyebrows lifted. He looked far too entertained. Richard walked over next, squinting at him. "Son, you're back again. You trying to impress my daughter or fix plumbing?" "Dad," Miley groaned. "Stop." Evan laughed, brushing a hand over his beanie. "Just doing my job. And, occasionally saving the hot tub from mechanical doom." "You're good with your hands, then?" Elaine said with total sincerity. Miley slapped her own forehead. "Mom, please." Evan coughed into his fist to hide a laugh. "I'll leave you to the family game night." Miley stepped outside quickly, shutting the door behind her. "I'm so sorry. They're like this. I like this," he said softly. "It's nice seeing a family that's lively." Miley blinked. "Lively. Alive," he corrected with a shrug. "Connected. Even if they don't always know how to show it." She stared at him, heart warming unexpectedly. "Thanks." He smiled gently. "You're doing a good thing here." Before she could respond, a loud crash erupted inside. Miley's eyes widened. Oh no! They burst back in together. The wooden tile tower had collapsed spectacularly across the coffee table, and both her parents were sitting there guilty as children. "He breathed on it," Elaine accused. "She bumped the table," Richard insisted. "It was definitely him. It was definitely her." Marty leapt onto the table with profound disgust. Day 160 report. Enemy forces have destroyed their own tower. Highly unprofessional. Miley pressed her fingers to her temples again. Evan laughed under his breath. "Should I get helmets?" She shoved him toward the door. "Goodbye, Evan." "Goodbye, Miley." As he stepped into the cold again, her parents exchanged a fleeting glance. One part mischief, one part embarrassment, one part nostalgia. Something flickered between them. A spark. Not enough. Not yet. But something. Miley took a breath. Operation Reunion was messy, chaotic, unpredictable. But for the first time, she believed it might actually work. Chapter 6. A hot tub and a meltdown. By evening, the storm had strengthened again, swirling white sheets outside the windows like a snow globe shaken by an impatient child. Wind brushed against the cabin with a low groan, but inside everything glowed warm and golden, the fire crackling in steady rhythm. Miley had expected tension. She had expected awkwardness. She had not expected whatever the strange, fragile dance was between her parents. Half nostalgia, half nerves, occasionally slipping into old habits. But dinner had gone surprisingly well. Her parents chopped vegetables together in the kitchen, stilted at first, then smoother. Richard teased Elaine about her tendency to overseason. Elaine teased him back about his tendency to pretend he didn't like spicy food, when in truth he simply didn't like admitting she'd been right about something. It was the closest thing to normal Miley had seen in years. She wanted to bottle the moment, save it, frame it. Then came the hot tub. Around 8 o'clock, after the chilly dishes were washed and the cabin had quieted into a cozy hum, her father looked out the window toward the deck and said, "I forgot how nice that hot tub was." Elaine folded her arms. "You hated that hot tub." "I did not hate it. You threatened to replace it with a patio grill. That was one time, and I was joking. You used a catalog to show me models." Richard blinked. "Okay, maybe twice." Miley groaned. "Do you two ever remember things the same way?" "No," they said together. They paused, then laughed, softly, uncertainly, but genuinely. "And that was enough." "Fine," Miley said, grabbing a basket of towels. "If the hot tub is so important to this family's emotional landscape, then we're using it." "Mom, Dad, go get your suits." Her mother's eyebrows shot up. "You want us to use it together?" Her father rubbed the back of his neck. "Maybe that's a bit much." "It's a hot tub," Miley said, "not a legally binding contract." They exchanged a look, a long one, quiet one. Miley held her breath. Then slowly they nodded. 10 minutes later, steam curled into the frosty air as the hot tub jets bubbled gently. Miley sat on the deck wrapped in a blanket, hot tea in hand, acting as neutral observer. Her parents climbed carefully into the hot water, sitting at opposite ends. They both sighed, one of relaxation, one of deep, bracing anxiety. "This is nice," Elaine said. "It is," Richard agreed, surprised to find it true. The steam lifted between them in soft curls, the snow settling silently on the wooden railing. "You know," Miley said, sitting nearby, "this was your honeymoon spot. Grandpa Howard said you two practically lived in this thing for a week." Her parents both choked. "Miley," Elaine hissed. "Oh my God," Richard groaned. "What?" Miley said innocently. "I'm just stating historical facts." Snowflakes drifted onto her blanket. She blew on her tea and gave them a pointed look. "It wouldn't kill you two to talk about the past without running away from it." They stared at each other over the bubbling water. "We did have good moments here," her mother finally said quietly. "We did," her father echoed. "A lot of them." Elaine traced circles in the water. I remember waking up that first morning and hearing you making coffee. You spilled half the grounds. You laughed so hard, Richard said, smiling faintly. I thought you were going to pass out. I'd never seen someone so serious about brewing anything. I wanted everything to be perfect. It didn't have to be, she whispered. Silence drifted between them again, but this time it held tenderness instead of tension. Miley exhaled, letting warmth spread through her chest. Maybe this could pop. The hot tub sputtered. The jets died. The lights flickered and fizzled out, leaving the water swirling in dim, lukewarm silence. Her father stared at the control panel. Oh no, Elaine sighed dramatically. You jinxed it. I didn't jinx it. You always jinx the hot tub. Why is everything suddenly my responsibility? You were nearest the control panel. That doesn't make me guilty. Miley slapped a hand over her eyes. Oh no, the meltdown had begun. In seconds, her parents were arguing, not about the hot tub, not really, but about years of unresolved everything. You always blamed me, Richard snapped, for everything that went wrong. You always refused to admit when you messed up, Elaine shot back. You expected perfection. You expected me to fix everything. Jets of warm water splashed weakly as they gestured. Miley stepped between them. Guys, stop. Her parents froze, breathing hard, faces flushed. This isn't, she began, but emotion caught in her throat. This isn't why we came here. Elaine's expression softened into instant guilt. Oh honey. Richard sank back against the tub wall, deflated. Miley, we didn't mean to fight. Yeah, she said, voice thin. But you did. Her mother moved toward the edge. We're sorry. Her father nodded. Really? Miley stepped back, tears pricking despite her best effort not to let them show. I just want you two to try. We are, Elaine whispered. We're just rusty. And stubborn, Miley said. And scared, Richard added quietly. That admission, so fragile, so unforced, was enough to shatter her frustration. She knelt beside the tub, hands gripping the wooden ledge. Then talked to each other. Not at each other. Her parents looked at each other. Actually looked. Snow drifted. Steam rose faintly. Something shifted. At that moment, the cabin door swung open and a familiar voice called, Everything okay out here? Miley turned. Evan stood in the doorway, coat dusted with snow, concern knitting his eyebrows. Her parents, still submerged in warm water like guilty otters, stared at him. Elaine squinted. It's the handsome caretaker again. Miley threw her hands up. Mom! Evan stifled a laugh. Should I leave? No, Miley said quickly. I mean, yes, no, just hot tub broke. Ah. Evan stepped fully onto the deck, kneeling beside the access panel. Let me take a look. While he worked, Miley whispered to her parents. See, even the universe wants you two to stop ignoring your issues. Elaine and Richard exchanged a sheepish look. After a few minutes, Evan frowned. Pump's failing. You won't be able to use this tonight. That's fine, Miley said. We've used it enough. Her parents nodded, subdued now. Evan leaned closer to Miley. You okay? She swallowed. Yeah, just managing. You're doing better than you think, he said softly. Before she could respond, Marty trotted out onto the deck, tail fluffed dramatically against the cold. He stopped beside the hot tub, glared into the water, and sneezed. Day 161, he documented in his invisible diary. The water prison has malfunctioned. Enemy leaders appear emotionally unstable. Situation deteriorating. Recommend seeking higher ground. Miley scooped him up. Traitor. Evan chuckled. I'll check the breaker box before I go. Her parents climbed out, shivering but calmer. Elaine wrapped a towel around herself. Miley, you're right. We need to talk. Really talk. Richard nodded. We will. Tonight. Miley exhaled slowly. The meltdown wasn't a disaster. It was a breakthrough. And as Evan tightened the access panel, snow falling softly around them, Miley realized, sometimes things had to break before they could be fixed. Chapter 7. Stormed in. The storm returned with unexpected force just after midnight, rattling the cabin windows with gusts sharp enough to make the glass hum. By morning, the world beyond the porch was white. No trees, no path, no pond, only a swirling curtain of snow that seemed determined to erase everything in sight. Miley stood at the window, mug in hand, trying not to panic. So, we're snowed in, she muttered. Marty sat at her feet, tail tucked around himself in a regal spiral. Day 162 of captivity, he surely wrote. Weather conditions hostile. The enemy appears unprepared. I remain vigilant. Well, came a voice behind her. This brings back memories. Her father stepped into the living room, hair rumpled, wrapped in a thick sweater that looked older than Miley. He was smiling, tired but sincere. A truce had been forged last night after the hot tub meltdown. Quiet apologies exchanged, promises to talk made, tension eased. Her mother appeared next in fuzzy socks, holding 2 blankets. She passed one to Richard without hesitation. That tiny gesture, simple, unthinking, made something warm flicker in Miley's chest. Her parents sat on the couch together, not touching but not actively fleeing from each other either. Well, Elaine said, peeking past the curtains. It's definitely a storm. Yup, Richard agreed. A big one. We'll have to stay put. So it seems. Their voices were casual, but they both looked at Miley for confirmation, like children waiting to hear a teacher explain a change in rules. Storm's bad, she said. Roads are closed. We're here until it passes. Elaine's hand drifted to her throat. Oh, Richard gave a soft laugh. Guess we have plenty of time to talk. Miley snorted. Don't sound so terrified, Dad. He opened his mouth to protest, then closed it. Fair. Her mother pulled her legs up beneath the blanket. We could do worse than being stuck in a warm cabin with hot drinks and a fire. Her father's eyebrows lifted. Did you just say something positive about being stuck somewhere? Elaine swatted him with the blanket, flustered and blushing. Don't start. He grinned. Miley inhaled slowly. Yes, this was good. She would not meddle. She would not push. She would simply provide the environment. And the environment was currently perfect. She padded into the kitchen, determined to keep spirits high. A warm breakfast would help. Music, too. She kept the volume low as she worked, gentle jazz, the kind that made the cabin feel like a timeless cocoon. She hummed faintly under her breath. Then she started singing, very softly, naturally, not performing, just moving with the song like she used to when she was young and the whole world felt possible. It wasn't until she heard the floorboard creak behind her that she realized she wasn't alone. Miley! She froze. Her mother stood in the doorway, one hand still holding the edge of the blanket she'd carried from the couch. Her face was soft with surprise. Her eyes shimmered with something deeper. Pride, maybe, or regret. I didn't know you still sang like that, Elaine whispered. Miley swallowed hard. I don't. Not usually. Richard stepped in too, leaning on the counter. You should. She looked away. I'm out of practice. That didn't sound like out of practice, her father said gently. Her mother moved closer. You used to fill the whole house with your voice. Remember that? Miley did. Too well. Yeah, she murmured. But life changed. It didn't have to, Elaine said, regret thickening her voice. Miley's breath caught. Her parents exchanged a look, painful, reflective. You passed on that jazz band opportunity, her father said. You were good enough, Miley. More than good enough. She shrugged, suddenly smaller. Bills were real. Dreams weren't. That's not true, Elaine said quietly. Your dreams were real. We just weren't brave enough to tell you to chase them. Richard nodded slowly. We let our own regrets bleed into your choices. The cabin felt suddenly too warm. Miley gripped the counter. Can we not do emotional surgery before breakfast? Her parents smiled sadly, but with understanding. Okay, Elaine whispered. But you should sing more. They drifted back to the living room, leaving her breathless, shaken, and strangely lighter. The storm groaned again outside. And then, a knock at the door. Miley's heart jumped. Who? She crossed the living room and opened the door just as a gust of snow swept in. Evan stood there, covered in frost, brushing flakes from his hair. Is it safe to assume you're trapped here too? He asked with an apologetic grin. Yes, she said, stepping aside. Come in. He stomped snow from his boots and entered, cheeks flushed red from the cold. Her parents looked over, surprised but not displeased. Caretaker Evan, Elaine said warmly. Snow warrior Evan, Richard corrected. Hot tub savior Evan, Elaine added. Evan rubbed the back of his neck, grinning. Just Evan is fine. Miley rolled her eyes. Ignore them. Actually, he said, leaning close enough for only her to hear. They're kind of great. Miley tilted her head, studying his expression. He meant it. She felt warmth curl low in her stomach. Unexpected, subtle, dangerous. So, he said, glancing at the windows. Looks like we're in for a long day. Board games, Elaine offered. Chili leftovers, Richard added. Evan turned to Miley. And maybe more singing? Her ears burned. That was nothing. That was wonderful, he corrected softly. Her heartbeat stumbled. The cabin, once filled with tension, now buzzed with something entirely different. Connection, possibility, the beginnings of fragile healing. The five of them sat together with bowls of warm chili, steam rising like hope into the quiet air. Conversations flowed easily. Stories resurfaced. Laughter flickered through the room like little sparks of electricity, rewiring old, broken circuits. And all the while, the storm raged outside, howling, wild, relentless. But inside the cabin, something new had begun to settle. A thaw. Tiny, tender warmth. The beginning of something that just might, survive the storm. Chapter 8. Old wounds, new words. The storm raged into the afternoon. A relentless curtain of white swallowing the world beyond the cabin. By now, the snowdrifts had climbed nearly to the porch railings, heavy and unmoving. The wind howled like some ancient creature circling, impatient to be let in. Inside, however, warmth glowed in every corner. The fire crackled. The lamps cast golden halos across wooden floors, and the scent of simmering cocoa drifted from the kitchen like a soft memory. Miley sat cross-legged on the rug, sorting through a small pile of board games, while her parents lingered near the fireplace. Not arguing, not avoiding, simply existing in the same warm space. Felt miraculous. Evan had taken an armchair beside the window, cleaning the damp snow from his gloves. Marty supervised from atop the couch, gaze stern and whiskers twitching. Day 163 of captivity he surely recorded. Enemy forces appear unusually cooperative. Suspicious. So, Richard said after several quiet minutes, poking at the fire with the iron poker. We should probably talk. Elaine paused mid-sip of cocoa. Her eyes flicked to Miley's. Talk? She echoed, nerves flashing behind her calm expression. Miley straightened. I can go into another room. No, her father said gently. You shouldn't have to leave. Her mother hesitated. We've put you in the middle for too long. Richard nodded. You deserve honesty. The real kind. Miley swallowed hard. Okay. Her parents moved to the couch together, not touching but close enough that their blankets brushed. Evan stayed silent, respectful, gaze cast discreetly toward the window as if measuring storm strength, though clearly listening. Elaine took a breath. We didn't divorce because we fell out of love. Richard nodded, jaw tightening. No, we didn't. The room stilled. Miley felt her heartbeat in her throat. Then why? She whispered. Her mother stared into her cocoa. We were young. Too young, maybe. We didn't know how to fight for the marriage without feeling like we were fighting each other. It was little things, Richard added softly. Small hurts we didn't talk about. Unspoken resentments. Missed chances to say, I'm sorry. Or I need help. Or, I'm scared. Elaine's voice trembled. We made silence a habit. And silence, Richard said, became the reason everything unraveled. Miley blinked back sudden, burning tears. You always seemed so perfect. That was the problem, her mother said with a sad smile. We tried too hard to appear perfect. And when we couldn't maintain that, her father added, we didn't know how to be imperfect together. They exchanged a look, raw, honest, unguarded. I never stopped loving her, Richard said quietly. A soft gasp escaped Elaine. I should have said it before, he continued, voice breaking slightly. I should have said a lot of things before. Elaine set her cocoa aside, fingers trembling. Richard, I'm not saying we should jump back into anything, he said quickly. But I can't pretend I don't regret how things ended. I regret every day I let pride keep me from fixing what mattered. Her mother's eyes glistened. You're not the only one with regrets. Miley's breath stuttered. This right here was everything she'd hoped for. Not a dramatic reunion. Not a fairy tale fix. Just truth. Real truth. Elaine wiped her eyes. I was stubborn. Scared. I thought admitting mistakes made me weak. Richard gave a small, sad smile. You were never weak, Elaine. I was too proud to say when I missed you, she whispered. Too ashamed to admit I wanted to try again. Richard closed his eyes briefly, pain tightening his features. I didn't know. I didn't tell you. Silence wrapped around them, heavy but healing. Evan finally spoke, voice soft. Sometimes storms wash away old ground so something new can grow. Miley looked at him, startled by the unexpected poetry of it. Her parents glanced toward him too, surprised, contemplative. Elaine sighed. Maybe we needed this. Being stuck here. Being forced to stop avoiding each other. Being forced to talk, Richard agreed. Being forced to shut up and listen, Elaine countered gently. He laughed, an honest, unrestrained laugh, the kind Miley hadn't heard from him in years. Elaine stared at him, startled, then joined in, her laughter soft at first, then full, warm, alive. It felt like the cabin itself exhaled. After a while, her father cleared his throat. I want to be clear, Miley. We're not promising anything rash. Her mother nodded. But we are promising to talk, really talk, to see where things stand. And not run from the hard parts, her father added. And not pretend everything is fine, Elaine murmured. They looked at each other. Something passed between them. Something unmistakable and fragile. A beginning. Not a redo. Not a reset. A beginning. Miley's chest swelled with relief. That's all I wanted. Her parents smiled at her. Together. Evan caught her eye and nodded with a quiet warmth that made her stomach flutter. All right, Richard said, shaking off the heaviness. That's enough emotional excavation for now. Elaine sniffed and chuckled. Agreed. Who's ready for another game? Miley said, eager to lighten the air. Richard raised his hand. Something that doesn't rely on balance. No word games, Elaine warned. No charades, her father countered. Miley pulled a box from the stack. How about memory match? Both parents groaned but didn't protest. As they reset the table for a new game, Evan drifted beside Miley. That was big, he said quietly. Yeah, she whispered. You did that. No, she said. They did. You opened the door, he countered. You gave them a safe place. His voice was soft enough that it warmed her more than the fire. You have a good heart, Miley Stone. She blinked, startled. I what? Evan smiled faintly. Just saying what's true. Her cheeks heated. She turned back to the game table before her expression betrayed too much. Marty leapt onto a chair, tail swishing with disdain. Day 163, updated, he recorded solemnly. Humans negotiating peace. Reduced hostilities observed. Still awaiting tuna tribute. As the snowstorm roared against the cabin walls, the people inside, broken, hopeful, healing, sat together at a table built for memories. And for the first time in years, they were building new ones. Chapter 9. A night of truth. The storm eased by late evening, settling into a gentle snowfall that drifted silently across the windows like soft white feathers. The worst had passed. The world was finally still. The silence that followed felt almost sacred, like the cabin was holding its breath. Miley stood at the kitchen counter rinsing mugs, letting the warm water ground her. It had been one of the longest, most emotionally charged days she'd experienced in years. She wanted to crawl under a blanket and sleep for a week. But she was also strangely energized. Her parents, sitting closer, speaking gently, listening, were the closest thing to a miracle she'd ever seen. Evan lingered nearby, checking his phone for weather updates. Marty perched on the fridge like a disgruntled gargoyle. Somewhere in the living room, her parents flipped through the old honeymoon photo album that Evan had discovered earlier while searching for the breaker box. Miley dried her hands, heart thudding softly. You okay? She asked Evan. He slipped his phone back into his pocket. Should be clearing by morning. Roads should open early. Good, she whispered, though the word felt complicated. Evan studied her face. Long day. You have no idea. He stepped a little closer, voice lowered. You handled it well. She laughed under her breath. I felt like a referee in a three-way boxing match. You were more like the ringmaster, he said, juggling fire torches. And the occasional emotional grenade, she added. He smiled. Mostly those. She tucked a curl behind her ear. Thank you. For today. And yesterday. And the hot tub rescue. And not laughing when my mom called you handsome. Oh, I absolutely laughed, Evan said. I knew it. But, he added softly, it was nice. The warmth in that room. The way they started opening up. I know this is messy. I know it's personal. But it's rare to see people let each other in like that. Miley leaned back against the counter. I didn't think they still had this much love left. He tilted his head. Love doesn't disappear. It just gets buried sometimes. Her breath caught. The way he said it, gentle, knowing, hit somewhere she wasn't expecting. Before she could respond, her mother's delighted voice floated from the living room. Oh, look at this one. Richard, we were babies. Her father chuckled. And your hair. Oh my God, Elaine, your hair. It was the style. You looked like you were trying to summon the wind. Their laughter carried into the kitchen, warm, familiar, fragile. Miley felt tears sting her eyes. Evan said quietly, they're remembering. I know. Her voice cracked. He touched her elbow, light, steady, a grounding point. You did that. She swallowed hard. Maybe. But they're the ones choosing to try. He watched her for a long moment, eyes soft. You're a good person, Miley Stone. She blinked. Stop saying that. It's still true. His nearness hummed through the air, warm and terrifying. Before she could unravel, her father called, Miley? Come look at these pictures. She pushed off the counter. I know, Evan said, stepping back. Go. She joined her parents on the couch. Evan stayed near the doorway, leaning against the frame, arms folded but expression gentle. Elaine pointed at a photo of the cabin's pond from decades ago. Her mother wrapped in a red scarf, laughing at something her father had said. Richard stood beside her in the picture, younger, bright-eyed, hopelessly in love. We were so young, Elaine murmured. So stupid, Richard added. And so happy, Elaine whispered. The softness between them deepened, a quiet acknowledgement of everything they had lost, and everything they still might reclaim. After an hour of flipping through memories and stories, they finally closed the album. The fire dipped into embers. The room dimmed. I think I'll turn in, Elaine said, rubbing her eyes. Richard nodded. Me too. They exchanged a fragile smile before heading down the hall to their separate rooms, but closer together than last night, their footsteps falling in an unspoken rhythm. Miley sagged onto the couch as the cabin quieted, relief slipping through her like warm water. Evan approached slowly. They're getting there. Yeah, she whispered. They are. He gestured toward the coat rack. Walk. She blinked. In the snow. Storms calmed. Air's fresh. Could be nice. Her heart fluttered. Okay. They bundled in coats and stepped outside. The world was transformed. Soft mounds of snow glowing under the moonlight, branches sparkling with frost. The pond shimmered like a silver mirror beneath the trees. They walked side by side, boots crunching quietly, lantern in hand. After a few minutes, Evan said, You know, you're different than I expected. She raised an eyebrow. How? I thought you'd be uptight, bossy, maybe a little intense. I am all of those things. No, he shook his head. You're passionate, and stubborn, and caring. Those aren't flaws. She stared at him, breath-catching. And you're brave, he added gently. Most people wouldn't attempt something like this. She scoffed. It's not bravery. It's desperation. It's love, he corrected softly. Big difference. Her chest tightened. She opened her mouth to respond, but something rustled in the bushes. Did you hear? A blur of fur shot out from the shrubbery. Miley gasped. Marty? The cat bolted across the snowy clearing in wild pursuit of some unseen target. Squirrel? Ghost? Who knew? His calico tail vibrating with battle frenzy. Oh no, Miley groaned. Not again. Day 163, nightfall, Marty surely wrote as he charged through the snow. Mission: capture the elusive snow beast. Success imminent. Evan burst into laughter so warm it fogged the air. He's completely unhinged. He's a menace, she groaned, sprinting after the cat. Evan followed, lantern bobbing wildly. Come here, you tiny war criminal. Marty darted under a pine tree, then turned and hissed triumphantly at them as if claiming new territory. Miley scooped him up, panting. Your escape privileges are revoked. Marty wriggled indignantly. Capture unsuccessful, he noted solemnly. Retreat for now. She held the squirming cat tight, laughing despite herself. Evan's breath puffed warm clouds in the cold. He reached out, brushing snowflakes from her hair with gentle fingers. The world stilled. Their breath mingled. Her heart thudded. But instead of leaning in, Evan drew back slightly, eyes searching hers with soft question instead of assumption. A respectful pause. A moment waiting to be chosen. Miley's breath trembled. She didn't step forward. Not yet. Not while her emotions were tangled with the day's revelations. But she didn't step back either. And that was enough. Evan smiled slowly, bittersweet. Let's get inside. It's freezing. They returned to the cabin. Marty nestled in Miley's arms like a disgruntled hostage. Inside, the fire crackled low, warm and welcoming. The house felt alive with everything that had changed in the past day. Small shifts, big truths, fragile beginnings. And as Miley set Marty down and watched the embers glow, she knew something else had shifted too. Between her and Evan, a door had opened. Not rushing, not demanding, just quietly, patiently, waiting. Chapter 10, Morning Light. The storm had exhausted itself by dawn. When Miley woke, the world outside the cabin windows shimmered beneath a hush of pale gold. Snow blanketed everything with perfect stillness, untouched, soft as breath, glowing faintly under the rising sun. The house was quiet, warm, hopeful. Miley stretched, rubbing sleep from her eyes, then slipped out of bed and padded softly into the kitchen. The floor creaked, an old familiar groan she had grown fond of during the past few days. She set coffee brewing and wrapped her hands around a warm mug as the aroma filled the room. Marty appeared moments later, tail high, demanding breakfast with his usual air of indignation. Day 164 of captivity, he surely wrote. The human persists in delaying my meal. Cruel. You ate 2 hours ago, Miley whispered. You're fine, he hissed in protest. She fed him anyway. As she leaned against the counter, staring at the morning light dancing on the snow, she heard quiet voices coming from the living room. Her heartbeat quickened. Her parents. She approached the doorway slowly, not wanting to interrupt something fragile. Through the soft crackle of the fire, their conversation drifted toward her in gentle murmurs. Elaine sat curled on one end of the couch beneath a knitted blanket, hair still mussed from sleep. Richard sat on the far end, elbows on his knees, hands clasped. They weren't touching, but their postures leaned toward each other. Not tense, but open. I should have said something sooner, Elaine whispered. I didn't realize how much we shut down near the end. Richard nodded. I shut down too. More than I admitted. You thought I blamed you, she said. Didn't you? Elaine considered. Sometimes. But mostly we both blamed ourselves. A long pause. The fire crackled softly. Richard exhaled, voice low. I don't want to repeat those mistakes. Neither do I. Silence again, thoughtful, not strained. Then her father's voice, soft as a confession. I've missed you for a long time. Elaine's breath hitched. Richard. I'm not asking for anything, he added quickly. Not yet. I'm just being honest. Elaine wiped at her eyes. Thank you. They shared a look. Unsteady, aching, hopeful. Miley slipped quietly back into the kitchen before they noticed her. She pressed a hand to her chest. Yesterday had been a breakthrough. This morning was a promise. She nearly spilled her coffee when Evan's low voice rumbled behind her. Morning. She jumped. You scared me. Evan leaned against the doorframe, hair tousled in a way that suggested he'd run his hands through it too many times. He wore a flannel shirt and thermal undershirt that made him look like he'd stepped off a rustic holiday postcard. Sorry, he said, grinning. Didn't mean to sneak up on you. It's okay. She lifted her mug. Coffee? Please. She poured him some. He took the cup and wrapped both hands around it, blowing on the steam. Saw your parents talking. he said gently. Looked good. It was, Miley said, voice soft. Better than I thought it would be. They're doing the work, he said. You helped them get to that point. She shrugged. All I did was trap them in a cabin. Evan chuckled. Yeah, well, sometimes that's what people need. She looked at him over the rim of her mug. What do you need, Evan? He blinked. What do I? You always talk like you've already figured out life's seeker. T.S., she teased. But what about your own stuff? He stared into his coffee for a moment. I need. He paused, smiling faintly. I need a reason to stop running from things that scare me. Her heart knocked against her ribs. Like what? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he held her gaze. Steady, warm, full of something she wasn't sure she was ready to name. Then footsteps sounded in the hallway, and the moment broke like frost under sunlight. Elaine entered the kitchen with swollen, happy eyes. Good morning, sweetheart. Morning, Evan. Morning, Evan replied. Richard followed, stretching. Anyone hungry? I can cook eggs. Elaine raised an eyebrow. You? Cooking? I am capable, he insisted. Miley grinned, the air light and easy. Go on, Dad. Impress us. As Richard busied himself cracking eggs, and Elaine directed him from 3 feet away as though overseeing a high-risk operation, Miley leaned against the counter, watching her parents move around each other in quiet, tender familiarity. They'd stood in dozens of kitchens together across their lives. Some joyful, some strained, some full of beautiful budding love. This one, Miley realized, wasn't a return to the past. It was a new beginning. After breakfast, they gathered in the living room with hot drinks. Her parents sat close enough for their shoulders to brush, and neither moved away. When the fire popped loudly, her mother startled, and her father rested a hand on her arm without thinking. Elaine looked down at his hand. Richard did too. Neither pulled away. Miley felt a lump rise in her throat. Her father turned to her. Miley? You've given us a gift we didn't know how to ask for, he said. Thank you. Her mother nodded, eyes shining. We're going to take it slow, but we're going to try. Miley breathed in shakily. That's all I wanted. Richard rubbed the back of his neck awkwardly. We might start with counseling, Elaine added, and weekly meals. Real conversations. No hiding behind work or stubbornness. Miley grinned through happy tears. You two are really doing this. We're going to try, Elaine said again, stronger this time. Evan, leaning against the wall with crossed arms, watched the scene quietly, pride shimmering behind his relaxed smile. After hugs, tears, and more thank yous, Miley slipped onto the porch to breathe the cold air. Evan followed. She stood at the railing, watching sun reflect across the untouched snow. Evan settled beside her, elbows brushing. You okay? He asked softly. She nodded. I think so. I think everything's finally shifting. It is, he said. And it's terrifying. It's supposed to be. She looked up at him. What about you? What's shifting for you? He hesitated, but only for a heartbeat. You, he said quietly. Her breath caught. Me? You? He repeated, voice warm enough to melt the frost clinging to the railing. I wasn't expecting to meet someone who made me stop running. Miley stared at him, stunned. Evan, I'm not asking for anything right now, he added gently. Just being honest. His tone mirrored her father's earlier, raw, vulnerable. I like you, Miley Stone, he continued softly. More than I meant to. Something fluttered inside her. Small, hopeful, afraid. She swallowed. I like you too. Evan smiled, slow, genuine, grounding. Good. They stood in the quiet morning. Two people on the edge of something neither had words for yet. Behind them, laughter floated from inside the cabin. Her parents rediscovering each other. Marty appeared beside them, tiny paw prints trailing behind him. He stared up at the two humans and sighed dramatically. Day 164, midday, he noted. The humans are forming alliances. I must monitor this development closely. Miley bent and scooped him up, pressing her face into his warm fur. Things are changing, Marty, she whispered. The cat flicked his tail with long-suffering patience. As long as tuna allotment increases, his expression said. Miley looked up at Evan. Evan looked back with eyes full of quiet promise. And for the first time in years, Miley let herself believe change could be good. Chapter 11, The Return Home. The roads were open by noon. A plow had carved a narrow, winding path down the forest road, leaving tall walls of snow on either side like silent, frozen sentinels. The sky had brightened into a pale winter blue, the kind of blue that felt almost tender after days of turmoil. Miley stood by the cabin porch with her parents as they loaded their bags into their separate cars. Separate, yes, but they moved in tandem now, like people who remembered how to coordinate without thinking too hard about it. Elaine tucked her hair behind her ear. We'll call you tonight? Only if you want, Miley said. We want, her father answered before her mother could speak. Elaine gave him a small smile. Not big, not dramatic, just soft. No. Richard walked over and hugged Miley tightly. Thank you, kiddo. More than you know. Elaine joined the embrace, wrapping both of them in her arms. "We'll keep trying," she whispered. "One step at a time. Just talk to each other," Miley said, pulling back to study them. "No more silence. No more silence," both parents repeated. They exchanged one last look before heading to their cars, awkward but hopeful. They weren't leaving together. Not yet, maybe not for a long time, but they were leaving with the same destination in mind. And that mattered. Miley watched their cars crunch down the road until they disappeared between the pines. Silence settled. The cabin felt suddenly bigger now. Too big. "You did it," Evan said behind her. She turned. He stood on the porch steps, hands in his pockets, breath forming soft clouds in the cold air. "They did it," she corrected. "You gave them the space," he said. "The nudge, the courage." She sighed, emotions drifting through her like slow-moving currents. "I don't know if it will last. Nothing worth having comes with guarantees," Evan said. "But they're choosing to try again. That's more than most people get." Miley stared at him, the sun catching the faint stubble along his jaw. "You always know exactly what to say. It's infuriating." He grinned. "I'll try to be less helpful." She nudged him lightly. "Don't you dare." They packed up the cabin together in a comfortable rhythm, folding blankets, washing dishes, clearing the fireplace. Marty wandered around like a prison warden conducting final inspection. Day 165 of captivity he surely recorded. Enemy fortress is being dismantled. Escape potential increasing. After locking up, Evan walked her to her car, his boots crunching beside hers. "So," he said, leaning one hand on the driver's door, "this is goodbye for now?" "Not goodbye," Miley said quickly. "Just see you soon." His eyes warmed. "I like soon." She wasn't ready to lean in, wasn't ready to kiss him. Her heart was still trembling from the emotional earthquake of the past 3 days, and she needed to step back into her life before she reached for anything new. But she was ready for this. She brushed her fingers along his hand, barely a touch, and whispered, "Thank you, for everything." His breath caught just slightly. "Anytime." She climbed into the car. Evan closed the door gently, like he was afraid to break something. As she pulled away, he stood in the snow with his hands in his pockets, watching her go with a hopeful, quiet smile. Miley checked the mirror once, then twice. Evan remained there, a warm figure against the pale winter light, until the forest swallowed the cabin from view. The drive home felt surreal. Her phone buzzed with new messages, dozens from coworkers about deadlines, reminders from her boss, spam, updates, and a meme group chat she'd forgotten she wasn't actually part of anymore. But one message stood out. "Mom, lunch on Wednesday? With your dad? We'd like you there." Miley smiled softly. Another message arrived a moment later. "Dad, we're talking about counseling. Don't panic." She laughed, a real laugh, as she turned onto the main road. At home, the normalcy felt strange. Her apartment was warm. Marty immediately claimed the nearest heat vent like a tiny tyrant, and the hum of the refrigerator sounded impossibly loud after the cabin's stillness. She wandered into her bedroom, set down her bags, and stared at her reflection in the mirror. Exhausted, hopeful, changed. Her phone buzzed once more. A new message from an unknown number. "Evan, made it home safe? And did Marty accept his return to captivity?" Miley smiled so hard her cheeks hurt. "Miley, yes to the first, no to the second. He's plotting revenge." The typing bubble appeared. "Evan, tell him to wait until after dinner. I'm making soup. Snowstorm recipe. You might like it." Her breath hitched. A soft, warm ache filled her chest. "Miley, are you inviting me?" "Evan, only if you want to come." She stared at the words. Want. It had been so long since she'd let herself want anything. And suddenly she did. "Miley, maybe not tonight, but soon." "Evan, soon works for me." She set her phone down, heart fluttering. Work emails, deadlines. The grind of her ordinary life crept back into her awareness, but they felt different now. Softer, less suffocating. Her parents were talking again. She was free to breathe again. And there was someone, unexpected, warm, steady, waiting in the wings. Miley curled up on the couch with Marty in her lap, stroking his fur absent-mindedly. He purred in reluctant surrender. "Things are really changing," she whispered. Marty flicked an ear. Day 165, evening. "The human seems optimistic. I remain suspicious." She laughed and hugged him. For the first time in years, the future didn't feel like a narrowing tunnel. It felt like an open door. Chapter 12. Singing again. The first week back at work felt surreal. Not because the office had changed, far from it. The cubicles still buzzed with fluorescent determination. Trent still bulldozed his way through conversations with urgent opportunities. And the coffee machine still brewed liquid disappointment. No, the surreal part was Miley. She had changed. Her parents called her every evening, sometimes together, sometimes separately, but each conversation was warm, honest, healing. They had met for lunch, scheduled their first counseling session, and were planning a cautious Sunday dinner at her mother's house. It felt like the universe had shifted a fraction in her favor. And then there was Evan. They had exchanged daily messages, small jokes, updates on Marty's imagined war crimes, occasional photos of the cabin in the thawing snow, but neither rushed anything. Felt right, slow, safe. Still, Miley hadn't expected her biggest transformation to happen on a random Thursday. Stone. Trent called from across the office. We still on for team building karaoke tonight? She froze. Karaoke? Yes. Trent slapped a stack of papers onto her desk without looking up. The vendor insisted. Something about bonding and boosting morale. Mandatory attendance. Mandatory? Miley, everything's mandatory if you do it with enthusiasm. She gave him a look. He gave her finger guns. She groaned. As the clock hit 7, the team trudged into the Silver Note, a neon-lit karaoke bar tucked between a thrift store and a yoga studio that smelled faintly of peppermint and nostalgia. Miley slid into a booth with her coworkers. The lights dimmed. The first brave soul belted off-key 80s rock. Drinks flowed. Laughter grew. The mood warmed. Then Trent hopped onto the stage with the swagger of a man who believed he was far cooler than he actually was. Team, he shouted into the microphone. Tonight is about connection, vulnerability, passion. Oh no, Miley whispered. Trent gestured dramatically toward her. And speaking of passion, our very own Miley Stone has volunteered to sing. I what? She yelped, nearly choking on her soda. The team erupted into cheers. No volunteering happened, Miley said loudly. I was sitting quietly. Miley, Miley, her co-workers chanted. Trent folded his arms smugly. Stone, you're up. Team spirit. She glared at him. This is illegal. Company policy, Trent lied. The spotlight swung to her. Her heart hammered. Panic fluttered like moth wings in her chest. No, I can't. Not here. Not in front of them. But then her phone buzzed in her pocket. A new message from Evan. Evan, thinking about you. Hope today's kind to you. And suddenly, everything inside her stilled. She took a slow breath. What was she doing? Hiding again? Shrinking again? No, that wasn't her anymore. She stood. Her coworkers hooped. Trent pumped a fist. That's the energy. Miley walked to the stage with legs that felt both shaky and strangely light. She scanned the song list quickly, too quickly, and chose the first jazz standard her eyes landed on. The opening notes flowed through the speakers. A hush fell. Her throat tightened. Fear, memory, longing. But then the first lyric rose in her chest like it had been waiting. She sang. Soft at first. Quiet. Tentative. Then stronger. Her voice warmed. Widened. Unfurled. Smooth as honey. Clear as winter light. Every note wrapped the room in something golden. Something real. The bar fell silent. Even the bartenders stopped. People turned. Glasses paused halfway to lips. Conversations dying mid-sentence. Miley closed her eyes and let the music take her. Let it spill from the part of her soul she'd boarded up years ago. She wasn't performing. She wasn't impressing. She was existing in the one place she'd always felt truly free. When she opened her eyes, the room stared back in stunned silence. Then erupted. Cheers. Applause. Someone whistled. Someone else shouted, "Holy crap!" Her coworkers gaped. Trent looked like he had just witnessed a deity descend upon the bar. Miley, he breathed. Why did you hide this from the team? You're incredible. She laughed shakily. It's just a hobby. That's not a hobby, someone said. That's a calling. Heat rose to her cheeks. She stepped off the stage, heart pounding but soaring. When someone called from the back, Miley, she turned. Her stomach dropped, lifted, exploded. Evan stood at the entrance, snow still dusting his hair from the walk-in, eyes wide with wonder. She whispered, "What are you?" "A little bird told me about karaoke night," he said, walking toward her. "Your grandma." Miley groaned. "Oh God. But I'm glad she did," he said softly, stopping in front of her. "You were breathtaking." Her breath caught. "You heard that?" she whispered. "I heard you," he said. "Really heard you." Her chest tightened, full, warm, terrified, elated. "Evan," she whispered. He smiled gently, stepping just close enough that she felt his warmth. "Come walk with me?" She nodded. They slipped outside into the quiet night. Snowflakes drifted lazily under the streetlights. The cold was sharp, but her blood ran hot. "You're incredible," Evan said again. "I knew you could sing, but that was soul." Miley laughed nervously. "I almost didn't go up." "Why?" "Because I was scared." She exhaled. "I've been scared for a long time." He reached for her hand, not grabbing, just offering. She looked down at their fingers, hesitated, then intertwined them with hers. His breath shook just slightly. "Miley," he murmured, voice warm as the cabin fire. "You don't have to be fearless, just honest." She swallowed. "I'm trying." "You're doing beautifully." She leaned into him, slowly, tentatively, and he slipped an arm around her shoulders, drawing her gently against his chest. Snowflakes landed in her hair. His breath warmed the top of her head. For a long moment, they simply stood there. Two people unsure of the future, but finally brave enough to want one. The door burst open behind them. Miley! Trent shouted. We need you to headline every team event from now on. Evan laughed. Miley groaned. Marty, safe at home, no doubt was making a diary entry about the human's suspicious absence. Day 166, human missing, possibly defected, contemplating new leadership. But Miley, standing in the soft glow of streetlights with Evan's arms around her, didn't care about consequences or fear or the long, winding road ahead. She cared about this moment, this connection, this rediscovery of her voice, herself. And for the first time in years, she wanted more. Chapter 13, choosing something new. 2 weeks passed. 2 weeks of steady, hopeful progress, of change that felt less like upheaval and more like slow, patient thaw. Her parents had met with a counselor twice already. They didn't announce triumphs or dramatic revelations, but they kept showing up, sitting side by side in the waiting room, leaving together afterward for coffee or a small shared lunch. Each update they gave Miley came with cautious optimism. We're talking, her mother would say. We're listening, her father would add. And every time, Miley felt something expand in her chest, tender, relieved, healing. Meanwhile, work returned to its relentless rhythm. But now the grind felt bearable. Because every day, when she sat at her desk, muscling through spreadsheets and pitch drafts, she felt something different humming beneath the surface. A pull, a longing, a memory of a spotlight and a microphone. And then there was Evan, a quiet, growing presence woven through her days. They texted constantly, sometimes long conversations, sometimes just small jokes, photos of Marty glaring at the world, or snapshots of the thawing pond behind the cabin. He didn't push. He didn't disappear. He simply stayed. Until one crisp Friday evening, when he asked her something unexpected. Evan, there's a small jazz collective downtown. They meet Saturday nights. Just an informal jam. Thought you might want to hear them. Her breath hitched. Miley, you're inviting me to listen or? Evan, inviting you to join, if you want. Her fingers trembled. Her heart pounded hard enough to feel like a tremor in her ribs. Miley, let me think about it. He replied with no pressure, no expectations. Evan, take your time. Except that's all she could think about. By Saturday afternoon, Miley found herself standing at her mirror, staring at her reflection. She was wearing jeans and a soft emerald green blouse, hair curled gently at the ends. Not fancy, not dull, just her. The version of herself she used to believe in. The version she'd almost forgotten. Marty watched from the dresser with frosty judgment. Day 180 of captivity, he surely wrote. The human prepares for a mission of unknown danger. I suspect cooperation with enemy forces. Wish me luck, she whispered, touching his head. He hissed delicately and flicked his tail. Close enough. The jazz collective met in a small lounge tucked beneath a bookstore downtown. A cozy cave of amber lighting, mismatched tables, velvet stools, and a small stage framed by fairy lights. Evan waited by the door, hands in his coat pockets. When he saw her, his entire expression softened. You came, she inhaled. I came. You look. He stopped, searching for the right word. Ready. Her chest warmed. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. I'm just listening. Of course. A playful glint lit his eyes. Just listening. They sat at a small round table near the front. A trio was already playing, upright bass, piano, and a drummer with a feather-light touch. The vocalist had a caramel-smooth voice that slipped through the room like honey in warm tea. Miley closed her eyes. Music wrapped around her like an embrace she hadn't felt in years, tugging at parts of her she'd buried beneath deadlines and practicality. When she opened her eyes again, Evan was watching her. Not in awe, not with expectation, but with quiet understanding. You miss it, he said softly. Her throat tightened. More than I will ever admit. You don't have to admit it, he replied. Just feel it. His words settled into her like warm embers. The vocalist finished a set and stepped off stage to sip tea at the bar. The pianist adjusted sheet music. The bass player retuned a string. Easy, natural transitions. A space where creativity wasn't performance, but simply living. Evan leaned toward her. They always invite walk-ups. She stiffened. No. You could. I won't. You want to. She glared at him, but he was right. She wanted to with an ache so old it felt new again. The bandleader, a gray-haired woman with sparkly earrings and a smile that welcomed strangers like old friends, approached their table. You two together? She asked, gesturing between them. Miley blinked. Not officially, Evan said with a crooked smile. The bandleader winked. Soon then. Miley nearly passed out. The woman turned to her. You sing. What? No. Miley shook her head way too quickly. That's no, why would you think? The bandleader laughed. Because you're sitting like someone about to leap out of her skin if she doesn't get up there. Evan did not help, swallowing a grin. I listen, Miley sputtered. I don't perform anymore. The woman shrugged. Then don't perform. Just sing. She walked off, leaving the invitation hovering in the air like a dare. Evan leaned in again. You don't have to. Miley stared at the stage, at the microphone, at the soft, golden light waiting like a patient old friend. I'm terrified, she whispered. He nodded. That's how you know it matters. And somehow that was the sentence that tipped the scales. Her heart thudded as she stood, legs shaking. She crossed the small room on autopilot. The band looked up as she approached. May I? She asked, voice barely there. The pianist grinned. Of course. What's your song? She hesitated, then answered the truth. At last. Classic. A risk. A confession set to music. The pianist nodded once. Key. Original. He lifted his hands. The room quieted. Miley took the microphone. Her pulse thundered. Her first breath trembled. Then she began. The first note came out soft but sure, the kind of softness that wasn't weakness but choice. The room leaned toward her, listening, absorbing. Her fear melted into the air like frost meeting sunlight. Her voice grew warmer with each lyric, blooming into something deep and rich and utterly her. She sang like someone rediscovering oxygen, like someone choosing truth, like someone claiming herself. When she reached the final line, she held the last note for one trembling, beautiful moment. Then silence, then applause, loud and warm and rising like a wave. Miley's eyes stung. She stepped away from the microphone. Evan was standing now, smiling in a way that reached all the way into her ribs. When she reached their table, she whispered, I didn't faint. He laughed softly. You did more than that. He reached out. She didn't hesitate this time. Their hands met. Evan stepped closer, voice warm against her ear. You're incredible. Miley breathed him in. I think I'm finally starting to believe that. He brushed a thumb across her knuckles. So, can I ask you on a real date now? She smiled, slow, fearless. New. Yes, you can. And you'll say yes? She squeezed his hand. Evan, I'm saying yes to a lot of things lately. They stepped out into the crisp night afterward. Snow glittering on the sidewalks, city lights reflecting on the wet pavement. Miley felt lighter, brighter, like someone who had finally stopped waiting for life to happen. Marty would later record in his mental diary. Day 180 concludes. Human returns smelling of foreign territory. Spirits unusually high. Possible romance detected. Highly concerning. Must monitor further. But Miley didn't care. She had her voice back. Her parents had each other again. And Evan, warm, steady, patient Evan, was walking beside her into something neither needed to name yet because it was already real. For the first time in years, Miley Stone chose something new. And it felt like the start of everything. Epilogue, new seasons. Spring arrived early that year. The snow melted in soft waves, uncovering the first stubborn blades of green along the sidewalks. Birds returned with noisy enthusiasm. Window boxes in the city began filling with hopeful bursts of color. And for Miley Stone, everything felt different. Not because life was suddenly perfect. Far from it. Her job still had stressful days. Trent still misused the phrase team synergy at least 3 times a week. Marty still believed he lived under an oppressive regime. But life felt bigger now. Fuller. Like she'd stepped into a world she hadn't realized she'd closed the door on. On a breezy Saturday morning, Miley carried her microphone case and a thermos of lemon tea into the Community Arts Center. The Jazz Collective rehearsed in a studio with mismatched chairs and a chalkboard that never erased properly. She loved every imperfect inch of it. Morning superstar, called the bandleader, adjusting her sparkly earrings. Ready for tonight's set? Miley smiled, soft, shy but confident. I'm getting there. You're more than ready. The pianist winked at her. The bass player gave a small salute. The drummer twirled a stick with impressive risk. Miley took her place at the front of the room, heart thudding with familiar anticipation. She wasn't chasing fame. She wasn't chasing glory. She was just singing. And that was enough. Later that afternoon, she stopped by her parents' favorite cafe for a quick visit. Elaine and Richard sat together in a booth, sharing a cinnamon roll and occasionally bumping elbows with shy, happy smiles. They greeted her with warmth that no longer carried the brittle edges of unspoken regret. We're working on communication, her mother announced proudly. Your father now admits when he's wrong. Occasionally, Richard corrected. Within reason. Miley laughed. That's progress. Her mother's eyes softened. We owe that to you. You owe it to yourselves, Miley replied. I just got you in the same room. Her parents squeezed her hands from either side of the table. Still, Richard said. You were braver than we were. Miley swallowed around the warmth in her chest. I think we all learned something about being brave. They hugged her before she left. A real hug. A lasting one. As evening approached, Miley slipped out of the Arts Center dressed in a deep red blouse and black slacks, her curls pinned back on one side. She stepped outside to find Evan leaning against the hood of his truck, a bouquet of small wildflowers in hand. Her breath caught. You clean up well, he said, eyes tracing her with quiet admiration. You say that every time, she teased. It's always true. She accepted the flowers, cheeks warming. You're early. I like being early, he said. Gives me time to admire the view. She shook her head, flustered but smiling. You're impossible. And yet you keep saying yes to me. He offered his arm. She took it. Inside, the jazz lounge buzzed softly with anticipation. Miley greeted familiar faces, waved at strangers, and stepped onto the stage with a calm she never expected to feel. Evan sat near the front, hands folded, expression warm enough to light the dark walls. When the lights dimmed, Miley closed her eyes and sang. Not because she needed to, because she wanted to. Her voice drifted through the room like a ribbon of gold, steady, warm, alive. Each note echoed the new truth she had built, that dreams didn't disappear. They waited, patient and unbroken, until she was brave enough to claim them. When she finished, applause washed over her like sunlight. She met Evan's eyes. He stood, smiled, and when the band took their break, he met her at the side of the stage and drew her into a kiss soft enough to feel like a promise, but certain enough to feel like a beginning. You, he murmured against her forehead, are everything I hoped you'd find. She kissed him back. I think I finally believe that. That night, as the city lights blinked like small stars and the spring breeze rustled the budding trees, Miley walked home with Evan's hand in hers and the future unspooling before them, wide, wild, and welcoming. At home, Marty greeted her by sitting on her suitcase and glaring. Epilogue entry he surely recorded. Day 200 of captivity. Human returned smelling of flowers and happiness. Suspicious. Very suspicious. Must increase surveillance. Miley scooped him into her arms and laughed. Things are changing, buddy. Marty refused to comment. But even he didn't protest when she held him close. Life would still bring storms. Unexpected. Messy. Loud. But now, Miley had learned something she should have known years ago. Storms weren't endings. They were beginnings in disguise. And she wasn't afraid to begin anymore. The Secret Diary of Marty Stone, calico prisoner of war, as found beneath the human's bed, scratched into the cardboard of an Amazon box. Day 1 of my captivity. I have been taken. The tall human, codename Miley, stole me from the freedom compound known as foster home. I was promised salmon. Lies. All lies. Day 5. The enemy attempts psychological warfare by dangling a feather toy. I will not break. Note. Breaking occurred. Feather toy surprisingly effective. Day 22. Enemy insists on brushing me despite my loud and clearly repeated objections. I allowed exactly 3 strokes. The 4th was an act of war. Day 38. Managed to spill water dish. Enemy apologized, thinking it was her fault. Victory. Day 79. Human sings. She thinks I enjoy it. I do not. I do. But she must never know. Day 102. Planned escape up the curtains. Structural failure occurred. Curtains did not support my weight. Neither did my dignity. Day 153. Enemy has begun talking to me like I am a baby. I am a fearsome warrior. She will pay for this insult. After my nap. Day 158. Enemy has taken me to a remote winter fortress known as Cabin. Snow everywhere. Visibility 0. Possible ambush. Caretaker man exists. Tall. Suspiciously charming. I do not trust him. Day 158. Evening. Caretaker man offered pets. I accepted. Temporarily. For recon. Day 159. Enemy leaders, the parental units, have arrived at the fortress. They appear emotionally unstable. This will complicate matters. I must watch all of them. Simultaneously. This is impossible. Day 160. Humans constructed a tower of tiny wooden tiles. Then destroyed it. They blame one another. Amateur behavior. Day 160. Night ops. Attempted escape through chimney. Became sooty. Enemy found me. Bath was threatened. I aborted mission. Day 161. Hot water prison. The hot tub. Malfunctioned. Enemy leaders argued loudly. I stared at them with disappointment. They deserved it. Caretaker man arrived. Enemy mother called him handsome. I was offended on her behalf. Day 162. Blizzard has sealed us in. I am trapped with 4 humans and 1 flirtatious woodsman. Morale low. Humans playing board games. Discipline low. Day 163. Breakthrough. Enemy leaders have begun speaking truths. Emotional healing in progress. This is annoying. I preferred the yelling. It was louder. Day 163. Nightfall. I engaged in pursuit of snow beast, possibly a rabbit. Enemy apprehended me mid-mission. Cowards. Day 164. Humans left the fortress. Returned home. Food bowl refilled. A victory for the resistance. Day 165. Mother and father units speaking daily. Enemy seems hopeful. I do not understand this emotion. Day 166. Enemy sang in a loud glowing building called karaoke bar. Many humans clapped. She was good. Annoyingly good. Caretaker man arrived and looked at her like warm laundry fresh from the dryer. Suspicious. Day 172. Enemy now sings more often. She glows during these sessions. Normal? Unclear. I remain suspicious of positive developments. Day 180. Enemy returned home smelling of flowers and possible romance. Unacceptable. I must increase surveillance. Day 200, epilogue log. Enemy seems genuinely happy. The parental units are no longer chaotic. The caretaker visits frequently. The household is warm, comfortable, stable. This is suspicious. Very suspicious. I will continue my watch. I will monitor all tuna reserves carefully. The resistance never sleeps, except during sunbeams, or on laundry piles, or when belly rubbed. End of current logs. Further entries classified. The Cat Council High Chamber of Feline Affairs Final Debriefing Report. Operative Codename Marty. Species Calico. Domestic. Status allegedly adorable. Actually a hardened veteran. Mission long-term human surveillance. Duration 200 days. Result complicated. Transcript begins. Council Chair Cat Whiskermane. Operative Marty of the Aberdeen Sector. You stand before the council to deliver your final report. Step forward. Marty steps forward with regal disdain. Honored council, I come bearing the truth of my captivity. Assignment. Councilman Pawsworth. Assignment? Your reports described confinement, psychological warfare, tuna manipulation. Marty. Yes, all standard human tactics. Chaircat Whiskermane. Proceed. 1. Initial capture. I was lured from my foster territory under false pretenses. Promised salmon. Promised comfort. Received love. It was suspicious from the beginning. The human, codename Miley, carried me with warmth. I assumed it was a trick. It was not, which was more concerning. 2. Daily interactions and enemy tactics. The human frequently spoke to me in infantile tones, attempted cuddles without prior written consent, provided inconsistent meal schedules, sang loudly, without warning, kissed the top of my head, a war crime. Despite these cruelties, she possessed an illogical softness that made retaliation difficult. I shredded her curtains anyway, for morale maintenance. 3. The Winter Fortress, cabin mission. The human transported me to a remote, icy compound with enemy leaders known as parents. The situation deteriorated quickly. Emotional instability everywhere, a hot water prison malfunction, excessive nostalgia, flirtatious woodsman intrusion, yet, somehow, nobody died. Not even emotionally. This was shocking. The humans began healing, talking, laughing. Highly suspicious behavior. I monitored closely. 4. The woodsman, codename Evan. Tall, bearded, overly kind. Too many flannel shirts to be trusted. The human Miley liked him. He liked her back. They gazed at each other with warmth. They did the soft voice thing. They held hands. Hand-holding is stage 3 emotional contagion. Irreversible. I attempted intervention by knocking a vase over. It did nothing. Morale low. 5. The karaoke incident. The human sang in public. Everyone applauded. Her voice filled the room like a laser-guided emotional missile. Even I felt something. This is classified, of course. Afterward, she embraced the woodsman in falling snow. I hissed at the memory. The council room echoes with my pain. 6. Final status of human subjects. Council, my findings are grave. The humans are, sigh happy. The parental units have reconciled partially. The woodsman continues to visit. The human sings daily. They laugh. They cook. They pet me gently behind the ears in the way I like but will never admit. In short, love has broken containment. I could not stop it. I did not want to. 7. Recommendation to the council. I, Operative Marty, formerly a hardened prisoner of war, now officially recommend. Continued assignment in this unit. Increased tuna rations, non-negotiable. Emergency belly rubs. Permission to remain with my human permanently. She is acceptable. Fine. She is mine. I choose to stay. But keep surveillance active. The woodsman is still suspicious. Chaircat Whiskermane. Operative Marty, your mission is complete. Your findings suggest a rare phenomenon. A human household where warmth outweighs chaos. The council grants you permanent placement. And 3 cans of premium tuna. Marty, this concludes my report. Dismiss me. I must return to observe the human's suspicious happiness. Council unanimous purring. Transcript ends.